Chapter 2 Summary. Now that you have completed the short review of what you have learned in this, over the following review will reflect the memory angle modulation, pulse modulation. Alright, frequency shifting key. With the similar with the continuous wave of the keying and amplitude modulation, it is for the angle modulation for the carrier frequency exchange with the two discrete value of the opening with the closing of the key. Frequency modulation of the instantaneous frequency of the radio frequency wave, the variable the core of the modulation signal amplitude of the radio frequency wave, the kept constant. Modulation index, the ratio of the maximum frequency determined between the modulated and unmodulated carrier between the deviation frequency modulation frequency number, the significant sideband modulation frequency for determined with the bandwidth of the frequency modulation. The number of the significant sidebands can be determined by the modulation index, the modulation index, significant sideband, the reactance tube, the modulated frequency modulator, you have the reactance tube, and then shown with the tank circuit. Reactance tube, the oscillator modulating radio frequency input, the semiconductor reactance modulator, chiefly frequency modulator, lower power semiconductor transmitter, the multi-vibrator modulator, some stable multi-vibrator modulating voltage insert of the series of the base return the multi-vibrator transistor, factor frequency modulator with the factor especially designed with a dial with a certain amount of the capacitance between the junction for the control of the reverse biasing. Alright, phase modulation. The carrier of the phase of the cup with the shift of the rate with the modulation over the amount of the phase shift of the control of the amplitude of the modulating wave. Audio, unmodulated wave, modulated wave. Basic phase modulation made the single the tube of the series of the capacitor to form of the phase shift of the amp for the impedance for the tube chain for the phase of the output shift. Positive phase modulator of the audio frequency input with the radio frequency input, the voltage output. The phase shifting key, the similar with the continuous wave of the frequency shift key, keying it consists of the phase reversal with the carriage frequency, the modulating signal data with the elements opening and close of the modulator key. Unmodulated carrier, the modulating signal data elements, and off the modulator carrier, the modulator carrier after filtering, the pulse modulation, which also allow the oscillation to occur over the given period of time only during selected intervals. The pulse repetition time, the specific time period with each of the group of the radio frequency pulses. The pulse repetition frequency defined with during the pulse repetition time, and one defined with how often the group so pulses occur. The pulse width, the pulse duration, the time of the pulse is occurring. The pulse time, or rest time is the time referred to the pulse time. Peak power, the maximum power during the pulse, the average power, peak power average over the one complete cycle. Duty cycle ratio of the working of the total time of the ratio of the actual transit time of the transit time for the rest of the time intermittently operated devices. Spark gap modulator. Consider the circuit of the destroying energy. The circuit is rapidly discharged with the stored circuit. Pulse transform the power source. Show the thiatron modulator electronic switch requires the positive trigger of the only 150 volts. The trigger must provide the rate 100 volts per microsecond of the fire call with the modulator to conduct. In communication and pulse modulation system, modulating waves must be the sample at 2.5 times higher modulating frequency to ensure accuracy. Pulse amplitude modulation the modulation in which the amplitude each of the pulse will control the instantaneous amplitude modulation signal the time of each of the pulse. Pulse duration modulation and pulse width modulation are the both designation of the type of the modulation. Width of each of the pulse of the train is proportional to the instantaneous value of the modulation and the instant of the pulse. The pulse position modulation has the advantage required with the constant transmitter with the amplitude of the width of the pulse of the kept and constant the same type of the position of each of the pulse relation to the position recurrent with the reference of pulse of the variable each of the instant sample of the value of the modulation wave. Unmodulated wave, unmodulated position, pulse total PTM. Pulse total modulation, pulse frequency modulation, a method of pulse modulation, which of the modulation wave of the frequency modulated pulse generated circuit. The pulse code modulation further to specifically the standard value of the quantized wave, indicated with the shear of the code pulse of the given them with the modulating wave value of the instant of the sample. And that was chapter 2 summary.